bounty has a problem. Today, we're going to talk about that. Hey everyone, Derpy here. Welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. Bounty is not a PvP event. In general, yes it is, but when you look at things a little more closely, there's only one true PvP element left in this game. We'll talk about that, as well as the different players who succeed in bounty, the aspects of it that are PvP or not, as well as the potential changes that Kixeye could and probably should introduce to this. At the end, I'll of course ask what you would want to do and how you would want to do things differently here, so make sure you stay tuned for that one. Now, addressing the big question here, is bounty PvP? It turns out that on its face, sort of, you're using Conqueror fleets against Defender fleets hitting bases seems like PvP, right? Well, there's four main ways you can get bounty. I guess you could count the Golden Nexus, which has its own host of problems and just covering your megas with other ships so players can't even click on it, which is no combat, so that's not PvP either, or just the time-based trip system, which is definitely not PvP either. Now, four main ways that you can actually get bounty, and bounty is marketed as the premier monthly event for PvP and Battle Pirates, where you can hit bases and protect your bounty from being stolen at all costs. First of all, you can go out and you can hit player bases. No one really does this, and let's be frank, that's because, well, it really isn't worth the payout. The problem is, if Kixeye bumps up that payout and you get 100,000 per hitting a player base, I'll go hit a lot more player bases. But what I would do instead, and what I try and convince people in the game to do, is let's just stick your warehouses, your outpost, your radio tower, all on the outside of your base. Everyone comes and peeks you, and just hits you, takes 10 medals and 100,000 bounty, or whatever other outrageous number you want to throw out there. So if Kixeye emphasizes that base hitting a little too much, it gets broken, and it doesn't work, and everyone just does everything for free, except trading a few medals back and forth. Other games have had this happen as well, when things like a 1-star get emphasized a little bit too much. So player bases, for one, you can't emphasize too much and have a high payout. Now, what happens when they have the current payout is that in any well-balanced PvP 1 versus 1 game, there's roughly a 50% chance of winning an attack and a 50% chance of winning a defense. Of course, on average, players want to win 90% of both of those, but that's just not possible. And maybe skill comes into it as well, which we'll definitely talk about. But the ideal base hit is I take my fleet of 5 ships, I go hit someone, and it's going to be really, really close if I win or if I lose. So 50-50 chance winning or losing, near dead fleet in either case, because again, it's a close base hit. You want the defender to feel like they have a chance, the attacker to feel like they have a chance. And that doesn't end up happening, which again is a different story. But if I have a 50-50 chance at losing my fleet either way, even if I win, for 2,500 to 3,500 bounty if I'm hitting the good bases, why would I possibly risk losing my entire fleet? Guarantee I lose my entire fleet for a chance at 3,500 bounty. When, by the way, you need 100,000, 200, 300,000 bounty. You just wouldn't do it. Base hitting and bounty does not make sense unless you're going and hitting people that are way too easy, level 80s, level 100s, and just farming them for instant repair, which, by the way, isn't fun either, and one player succeeding means that a dozen, 2 dozen are completely defeated and are completely smashed. So player bases don't work well because Kixeye, if they give too many points for them, then they can't emphasize them too far. People will just stick things in the corner, get everything done for free. Alright, how about shipwrecks? And this is the case, which is the one true PvP aspect left in the game. It's 1 versus 1. It is a theoretical fair playing ground. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. And there's no alliance help. There's nothing like that. You win or you lose. If you win, your fleet has instant repair. If you lose, well, hey, you have a little short repair time. Probably spend a coin or two, go back after them. Seems pretty good. It's the one true PvP element left in this game, is at least what I'm arguing here. Then, of course, we also have the Kixeye employee bases, and those are interesting because it feels like a raid. Bounty feels like a raid using the Conqueror class of ships. You're using that same fleet of ships in the same static target 20, 50, 100 times to get the points you possibly need, and in addition to dealing with a whole bunch of different issues. Generally, there's 1 or 2 targets in Bounty that can be done for pretty low repair on the meta-dependent side of it, and you hit that 1, 2, maybe 3 targets over and over and over again, and that just isn't fun. This past raid, in actual PvE raid I just did, I needed 110 million. That was 220 targets. That's not fun. Hitting 50 of some Kixeye employee's base 100 times, 50 times, it's not fun. It's not fun to do that, and it is not PvP. It is not a variety of bases trying to see if your fleet can do this, improving your driving skills a little bit. You've already demonstrated mastery by beating it once. By beating it 5 times, why should I need to do it 50? Kixeye employee bases is at best player versus AI. Player versus the same target, not player versus player. It really just doesn't work out like that. It's like if you were doing PvP and every single person had the same exact base layout, not just copying one and not really doing it right, which is what happens now, but the same exact base layout. So the only one true PvP thing in this game anymore is shipwrecks. Alright, so we talk a little bit about that. Let's try and talk about who's good at Bounty. This is an interesting question. It is who is able to actually participate and get prizes. I did a few different polls asking if you participate in Bounty and how much you like it, varying from it's your favorite event to not having any clue what it is. And in general, people are aware of Bounty, and there is a fairly substantial portion of people who do Bounty every time. Like, they like it, they do it every time. Those players exist. There's also players who are really upset by the system and don't do it. I think the most popular answer isn't even on here, and that answer would be, I do Bounty every time, but it annoys me. There's a bunch of things wrong with it. I'd like them to do better. It's really grindy, feels like a raid, does not feel like a PvP event, and that seems to be the majority of the responses, actual text responses, people giving feedback that I got. So it seems like that's what we're dealing with in general. Of course, you have to keep players happy, but you also have to make sure that you're still making money on it. It's a challenging situation. Again, that's coming up a little later. But the people who are good at Bounty are the people who have the tools, have the toys even to do that. The people who did Bounty 49 are going to be good at Bounty 50 because they got whatever that prize was and can go hit some bases. But to be good at Bounty 49, you need to have played Bounty 48. And to be good at Bounty 48, you need to have played Bounty 47. So the players who actively do PvP and are high levels, have all the toys, are really good at that and can go smash all the people who are just entering. It really is no competition, not even close. And it really helps too if you take the bounty prize you won and 24 hours after the store, right when that store opens, 24 hours after the event starts, you coin out that brand new shiny fleet and you go hit everyone's bases with a new unstoppable attacker, then hey, that happens too. And same thing, if we get a new unstoppable defender, you go coin that out, build it in your base, throw 2 in your base card, and no one can hit you or take your bounty. That works pretty well too. So the people who are good at Bounty are the PvP players who've always done it. Catching up is an entirely different mechanic. Now, the second point here is a really, really big one. Bounty and the damage you take in that and how easy or hard it is extremely meta-dependent. So meta being how hard is PvP in general at that time. If PvP is really easy for attackers and they're just going out flattening bases completely all the time, Bounty is super easy. We saw that with people who had the mutator versus people who didn't. If I have 4 exterminators and a mutator, I'm taking a fraction of the damage of someone who has 5 exterminators. It's not even close, and this is a ship with a 28 day build time. So people are having a lot of luck if they have the tools, and those tools are meta dependent. How hard or easy bases are to hit and how many points you get for those doesn't, I mean, the points does not change every time, but the difficulty of bases does change every single time. If I'm taking an hour repair and one event and getting 1,000 points for 1 hour repair, the next event some new unstoppable defender comes out, I'm getting 10 hours repair for 1,000 points. There's a really big problem there, and there is no good way to separate these out here and have effectively a raid that's tuned around the damage environment of PvP. I guess you could just say tune PvP better, but I don't think that's been possible based on the results that we've seen from the current Battle Pirates team over the past 2 years. Now, this is difficult and things are different based on skill level. It's a very complicated problem to solve, but the ease of doing bounty is directly related to, it is identical to the ease of doing PvP, and those two are two separate things. To understand how we could possibly improve on this system or change anything around, we need to understand the time-money spectrum on Battle Pirates. So this is something, by the way, that goes back to something the Battle Pirates professor was talking about years and years ago. It's that players spend some combination of time and some combination of money on the game. Off to the far right of the spectrum, we have the person who just blitzes everything, builds it all the first second possible, 400 billion in the first hour of raid, and that's the massive whale. And by the way, these people are great. They effectively pay for everyone's game. It's fantastic. So thank you. Please keep doing what you're doing. And Kixeye needs to keep making these players happy. At hopefully not at the expense of all the other players. But this is, the person who's spending all money, no time. Over off on the left, we have the people who are spending no money all time, just grinding out, hitting those C targets for instant repair over and over and over. And everyone falls in the middle of this somewhere, and the average player spending some combination of money and time. I tend to be very high on time, very low on money. Other players will spend $25 for that X1 upgrade, $40 for that U1 upgrade so they can actually play bounty. I don't spend $40 a month to play bounty because Kixeye is selling a solution and creating a problem kind of in that order. Now, this is a real thing, and Kixeye even includes this in their release notes. Replica blitz bases, including employee replica bases, can be blitzed to save you time. If that doesn't scream, we're trying to make you spend money instead of time, which is fair, you need to make that. But Kixeye does it at the expense, and I made another longer video on this one. It often seems like they do this at the expense, that they annoy you and frustrate you and throw all these changes at you and make these targets really difficult and intentionally try to frustrate you so you give up and you just blitz so you get the prizes. Of course, from a human perspective, that can't be what any rational person is doing, but it often seems like that from Kixeye. So there's the issue that we're dealing with. We need to keep those massive whales happy, and we need to make it so that every player possible can participate in the game. If you want to play the game, even if you don't want to spend any money, you can do that. Now, hopefully there's enough value actually added, not just negative value taken away, not just frustration taken away, but $5 a month, maybe that really helps you out, and you should add value to players who spend money. Otherwise, we get kind of what's currently happening. So that's a really important thing to understand, not just for bounty, not just for deciding if it's PvP or PvE, but really important to understand in general. So talking about that earlier video I made of is Kixeye trying to make bounty as annoying as possible to encourage you to blitz, there were 7 problems I identified in that video form post combination, and these are ones that are listed here. I kind of did a reverse engineering. If you're trying to make bounty as annoying as possible, you would do these 7 things. And that was having the points to damage ratio be way off and super dependent on the meta and swinging around a whole bunch, which is still occurring. I mean, if it's a really easy hit basis, great, easy bounty, done super easily, instant repair. If it's not, then it's going to be really, really difficult, and blitz prices suddenly look a whole lot more appealing. Now, that is still a large issue. The second issue was that points you get can be stolen. And this is still an issue, albeit a smaller one, because for players to have to not just stick all their things in the corner and have their friend come hit them and take all their bounty for free, you need to have them lose some of it. So you can't emphasize PvP too much. can't emphasize players hitting bases, I should say, too much, or that will happen. I still think the current one needs a little bit of work, but in general, it does discourage players from participating. The third element here is that there is a limited availability of targets. This is huge. Why are you only having one or two good targets to hit? You should have new interesting targets that are separate from each other almost every single month. You should have dozens of targets out there for people to try, not just the same two, because then it just feels like a raid the entire time, every single week. Now, the fourth issue here is that targets take a long time to complete. In general, that's still true. It does take a long time, although it's nowhere as large an issue ever since they stopped putting oil rigs off in the corners. Again, I complained about that dozens of times till it was fixed. I'm sure other people did as well. But there's no reason to put an oil rig in a corner in a base that players have to hit 50 times. You're just trying to waste time at this point. In general, they have done a better job of solving that, although there are still some issues like mountains blocking things off in corners, which, again, pretty annoying. Now, they have added the Kixeye employee bases to the locator to find targets, which they didn't even know was missing because Kixeye doesn't even play the game. But Kixeye employee bases are now in the locator, which is fantastic. It helps out, although the locator really doesn't work all the time. We still have a random target payout, which to me feels a little bit of a kick in the shin. Oh, you only get 25k, 2.5k this time instead of 3k. Haha, screw you. I just don't like it still. Maybe that's up to me. Maybe the uncertainty, the unknown is all part of the fun. The seventh large issue I pointed out here was the wolf in sheep's clothing. Why is the level 86 base the hardest but also the lowest number? It doesn't make too much sense. And why do you have two bases? Why are there two level 160s? No clue. And of course, there's a bunch of other problems here like the bubble timer, which we'll talk about on the next slide. In general, sort of 7 problems that I looked at earlier. They have fixed really well 2 of them. Kind of fixed, or I decided 2 weren't as big as issues, but still 3 pretty big issues. Number 1, number 3 there are large issues still. Extremely meta dependent, poor points to damage ratio, and still an extremely limited availability of targets. Alright, so if we have those problems, what could we possibly do about it? What things could we change about Bounty if we were going to change things around a little bit? And will any of this happen? Who knows? Probably not. Battle Pirates is kind of on life support, just keeps going as it has been, but there's a few things that you could probably do. First of all targets should spawn all the time. I mean, we have a limited availability of targets. Let's get that same variety out there, those shipwrecks, those Kixeye bases, stick them out there the entire time. If someone's busy for 2 days of the event, they should be able to still participate and still play the game, right? Now, the second thing is that interceptors should be at U2 for everyone for free in the Forsaken mission. At one point, there was actually 0 way to get interceptors in the game. And people argue that interceptors are useless. They are still useful for one thing in Bounty, shipwrecks, and that's about it. The payout for those also could be higher to make it more worth your while, but that is the true PvP, true skill element, really cheap fix, nice fun gameplay left in the game. It's hard to actually figure out how those things work, but it is actually fun. If you think it's not, it's probably because you don't super know how it works, but interceptors have great potential as long as everyone has access to them. Now, why should they be at U2 free for everyone? Because if I have to actually do Bounty and get like 50k in Bounty to upgrade one ship and spend 10 days in the shipyard to upgrade one ship, I'm not going to do it. So you need to have the tools to use the tools to get the better tools, which is that same catch-22 issue we're running into. That's why I think they should be at U2 free for everyone. Stick them in the Forsaken mission or in Bounty. It's super cheap. I'm talking 100, maybe 1,000 points for a chest of 3 of these things. And that would actually go a long way to bringing in players back to have more ways that they can play the game. I mean, we just want more people playing, and that's good for people playing because they're having fun. Good for Kixeye, hopefully being convinced to actually spend more money, right? Now, the other thing is reading this black bar at the bottom, and this is something that may not be super fair to the team, but I'm going to complain about it anyway. is that this text at the bottom has been in every single post for the last 20 or so bounties. Captains will continue to see more options for targets this bounty and more unconventional layouts. That would be fantastic if that was the case. If we were getting more targets every bounty, more unconventional layouts, that would be great. Instead, we have targets being retired because that dev quit or because they're way too easy now, which are both fair reasons, often in combination with each other there. But we should have increased target options in bounty. We shouldn't have the same few targets. We should have more of them. If you don't have enough of a team to actually give us a bunch of targets, maybe you need to actually hire people who are creative enough to make those. Maybe you need to pull some creative player, not mine, I'm not creative at all, from the player base and stick that in there. You got to start doing some things to actually change it up and make it more fun, to actually get people who used to play or don't play every time to actually play more often now. The one creative aspect I was able to come up with was a more Kixeye bases, which I guess we'll talk about in a moment, after we talk about the consistent difficulty for all Kixeye bases, which is that it's the whole meta dependent thing. Depending on my mutator, if I have it or not, means I can do bounty super easily, instant repair versus an hour damage per target. That should not happen. It should be pretty consistent. There are some ways to do that, including a little bit of a sandbox type element, or here we're giving you this fleet, drive it in this target, not using the player's own fleet, but using some random one out there. There are ways to actually have a more consistent difficulty, and that might mean just more time tuning if you don't want to do any creative solutions. Again, talked about more Kixeye bases. But on skill versus repetition, some of you may remember those raids we used to have where the targets would be numbered. We'd have 1 through 50. You'd have to go beat a whole bunch of them. And maybe these 10 would be a tier, and these 10 would be a tier, and you get some tier bonuses for doing these 10. And then you get harder as you go up, and the level 47 might be harder for some player than level 48. But there was 50 different targets, and you could reset everything, go back through the entire cycle, but you'd be hitting a bunch of different stuff, some easy ones, some hard ones, some of this type. And it took a lot more work, sure, but what if we try that in Bounty? What if we give players base targets to go hit with their own ships or with someone else's, just random build ones in a sandbox type mode, and try and drive through this space and win the battle? What if you had that? What if you could have actually more than just 2 targets hitting the same 50 times? Let's have 50 targets that you only hit each one twice. You just wouldn't get as bored if you were doing that. Now, do I expect this to happen? No, because it requires Kixeye to put in work and time to do this, which doesn't really seem to happen, but it's a possibility. It's what I would consider doing. Again, the next issue here is repair time versus bubble time. My gates take at least 12 hours to repair, maybe more like 16, 18 hours to actually fix. My portals, outpost takes a long time too. In Bounty, the maximum bubble time, it's not 18 hours, it's 4 hours. If I lose, and one, I'm asleep for longer than 4 hours, but if I lose my bubble and my gates are still only a quarter repaired, what do you think is happening the next offense? I'm losing. So if you're bad, and your base keeps getting flattened and keeps getting flattened again. And if you're good, people keep sinking your channel and they don't attack you and they lose, then you're good and your base can still win. So I get why you want a lower bubble time. I get why you don't want someone to be bubbled twice and only have 2 defenses the entire event, but reduce the repair time. Heck, make it literally instant repair if you'd like. I mean, you have to do something so players opt in and don't feel penalized for opting into Bounty. Sort of the last solution I'll give you here is the normal win conditions. There are still Kixeye employee bases that have the Great Hall off in a corner behind 2 mountains. I'm talking about, I think, the one of the 160, 164 maybe. And you have it off in the corner, bottom right corner, where you have to sail around the entire outside to go get that one building. That's stupid. That shouldn't happen. You should have just kill the outpost. Just kill the outpost in the warehouses, Great Hall, whatever, and have them all in a place that's nice and easy to complete. Try and design targets so they're easy to use for the humans interacting with that computer interface there. Do something so you're making sure you're making it as easy as possible for people in terms of frustrating them and not doing that. Otherwise, I'll have to go back to my thesis about battle pirates being encouraging people, frustrating them, trying to encourage them to blitz. Otherwise, that's going to happen. I mean, that's just what you're perpetrating there is that ideology. But go back to normal PvP win conditions. I shouldn't have to take one of my ships, sail around the entire base, and just kill the oil rigs, the Zenith mines, whatever else. It just takes longer. It's not great. And actually do the things you're saying you're doing. Captains will continue to see more options for targets of this bounty in some unconventional layouts. Why don't you do that? Now, I want to take a step back here and say that some of the points I'm presenting, number one, may not be true. I mean, I am not Kixeye. Kixeye is a broad entity here made up of different people. I'm not coming after any particular people. I'm not upset at any of these game designers and anyone like that. In general, the entity that's Kixeye needs to do a better job with some of this stuff. I try and get feedback on this stuff, and it really often is not taken. I'm just trying to encourage things could be better. Now, do we all players want everything for free all the time and it's always too high damage? It's probably too high damage if you ask. I don't want things that are too easy. I want things that are fun, things that are engaging, and ways for more players to play Battle Pirates. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. Now, maybe some of this stuff is already in the works. Maybe it is a bad idea because it makes too much work, no reward. Maybe you've thought about trying this already and it wouldn't work. But hey, I'm just throwing it out there, trying to get a conversation going here. That's what I was doing with those forum posts I made, but something needs to change. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you that if you were Kixeye, what would you do? Is the current system, is the current bounty system working right now for everyone, the majority of players? Is that good? Or can it be better? And if you caught the two U's in the video, extra bonus points. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you especially to all the channel members whose names appear on screen now. Until next time, this is Derpy, signing out, helping you be a better pirate.